Hello everyone, I'm Chris Mazzillo Shalotson, and today we're having a special look at Root, a game of woodland might and right from designers Cole Whirl and artist Kyle Ferrin. It's a game that sees you and your friends in an asymmetric battle royale of the sorts in a woodland as you each take a faction of your own to try and carve out your own slice of forest. Now then, before we get on over to that, there's one thing that's worth mentioning, and it's that Root is a Kickstarter game. Now, you might be already kind of withdrawing breath in shock and appalment, and sadly, there are some differences between the general Kickstarter version and the general retail version that most people will be getting after they buy it from maybe this. However, we'll cover those a bit later. Just know that what you might be seeing may not be entirely what you get. Anyway, now one of the first things that may have already caught your eye and me drawing you in is the art and theme brought to life by the brilliant artist Kyle Ferrin. It's something that just kind of draws you in, and it's just so beautiful to look at. From the charming main characters on the boards to the wonderful deck of cards filled with charming and fun art. You'll hear the odd snigger of bemusement or the sighing fawns of endearment as each player kind of stumbles upon a new card they may have not seen before and are just taken aback by it, such as house favourite, Mouse in a Sack. Despite the asymmetry, each faction has a number of basically shared actions that you just do in slightly different ways. You can move from clearing to clearing, fight using some dice, or craft using some of the various cards in your hands, such as the aforementioned Mouse in a Sack. Each card is suited, being fox, rabbit, or mouse, to correspond with one of the various clearings, and then you also have bird cards, because birds are wild, taking to the sky without having to care about gravity, the wind ruffling their feathers as they just don't have to submit to it. And this is it. This is the forest board you'll be working on. Revel in its beauty. We'll start by looking at the cats. The Marquis de Cat are the new rulers in this land, and they start out with nothing more than one warrior in every single clearing apart from one, as well as a sawmill and a workshop or two. Now the cats hope to swarm the board with their industry to make the most out of this rich and fertile land. You'll be doing this by primarily building your sawmills, which produce a wood each turn, but also by building both recruiters and workshops that can allow you to increase your army, as well as craft items respectively. Playing as the cats, you'll find yourself wanting to rapidly expand across the board, trying to get as many buildings out as you can, but also you'll find yourself being constantly beaten back by the encroaching forces. This often ends up leading to this point where you're beating back so far you've not got any more spaces to actually build in, and then you kind of need to expand in order to score your points. So you're just kind of stuck there trying to wonder whether to expand outwards and risk losing the buildings you've already got, or just kind of sit there and do nothing. Now then, the next faction that's worth looking at is the Eerie Dynasty, the Bird faction. They were once the proud rulers of the entire forest, but are now reduced to nothing more than a single clearing in a distant corner. Playing as the Eerie, you are bound by your decree, which is a sort of conveyor belt of command along the top of your board here. Each turn you'll place up to 2 cards into the decree, of which only one can be a bird, and then you have to enact your decree, starting from the right, going all the way to the left. Recruit in any relevant clearing, move from the required clearings, battle, and then build a new roost in a new clearing, scoring more points for the more roosts you have off of your player board. Simple. However, the moment you can't complete your decree, going from left to right, the Eerie Dynasty go into turmoil when basically the leader gets Julius Caesared, if you know what I mean. Your decree is scrapped, your leader deposed, and you lose as many points as you had bird cards in your decree. It's bad news. Now, in order to avoid this, you might think, Well, it's easy. I'll just stuff my decree full of bird cards because they allow me a greater tactical flexibility where I can basically do an action in any clearing as long as I've got a bird card there. What could possibly go wrong? Everything goes wrong. Your foolproof plan crumbles away like so much birdseed, and you find yourself falling even further down the track. Playing the Eerie is much like playing a reverse game of Kaplunk. You just keep adding more and more to it, hoping that you can just kind of hold on just a little bit longer, eke out a few more points until inevitably everything goes wrong. And it's just that stress of just building up and getting to a level where you just can't sustain it anymore. And next up, we've got the Woodland Alliance. Now, looking at the board, you might think it a little weird because, well, they don't really seem to be anywhere. That's because the Woodland Alliance are this sort of stealthy underground rebellion, slowly building up sympathy tokens against the powers that be in the forest until eventually they can build up enough support to go into full-out war and rebellion, overthrowing an entire clearing for the Woodland Alliance. The Woodland Alliance operate through sympathy and supporters. Their supporters are the small subset of cards that dictate where the Alliance can spread their cause. Starting out with small pockets of sympathetic clearings, they begin to spread like some sort of vicious plague, and the more you try and stomp them out, the more supporters they gain. As the Alliance establish bases of operations, they turn from a simple campaigning group to a full-blown people's militia, roving around the forest, tearing down the establishment one sawmill at a time. Although military actions are only limited by how many officers you end up recruiting and training, and even then you're even further limited by your teeny tiny number of actual pieces you have. All this means is that while your defense may be really strong, your actual ability to spread out and attack is incredibly limited, and the stronger you get, the more people will start concentrating their armies to try and counter you, making the ability to spread your points in your sympathy even more difficult, and it just gets so Hi there, I'm the last main faction in the board game, although I'm not really a faction, you see. I'm the vagabond, who's a sort of lone wanderer searching through the forest, just trying to make a name for themselves. You simply explore around the forest, rummaging through ruins for items and completing quests for the friendly locals, easily slipping in and out of forests, in clearings. No one can really stop you on your journey. And why would they want to? You're just a friendly little woodland creature who's willing to trade cards for items. That is, until you've become so bloated with items that you're completing countless quests and you're a one raccoon army unto yourself, smashing your way through everyone's forces before slipping back into the forest like a sort of greased raccoon. As the vagabond, you bring to the table an element of discussion. If you build that item that I really need, then I'll give you a really good card that would be really beneficial to you. If you don't attack me this turn, then I'll go and fight the birds who are on your borders and mess them up. Yes, these sort of things do exist within the game already, but by having the vagabond present, it increases it all quite dramatically, really. All of these factions come together to create this near like living, breathing map that fluctuates so much as pieces move around and buildings are destroyed and everything just is constantly in this state of movement. Unlike other games with some form of combat element, you don't have those like first 5 turns of basically no one wanting to attack anyone because no one wants to be the first aggravator, no one wants to be a dick. But in Root, you're all so crammed together and space is so limited that you have no choice to attack. You're always attacking all the time. There's no hard feelings and nothing ever feels malicious from attacking one another because that's just what you do. What it also means though is that despite having your own specific faction to work with, instead of focusing on your like 20-step plan of how to win the game, you're having to react to what's happening because the board state changes rapidly. So you might also be planning for the future, but you also have to be always reactive as well, planning for the present. There's something quite magical that always happens every single time I've played Root with people. Around halfway through the game, you begin to notice that your players are no longer simply looking down at their own board, but their attention has shifted upwards to the map as they no longer aim to simply survive, but instead to thrive as they enact their actions on other players. You see, exploring Root, its asymmetry, just everything this box of tricks has to offer, is where a lot of the enjoyment comes from. Even playing 2, 3 or 4 players, there's always something that occurs, like a player will be playing a faction you may not have played for a while, and they'll do something kind of interesting, and you think, I wonder if I could do something similar, but maybe different and do a lot better. You just want to experiment, and that's kind of wonderful with this sort of game because it's not complex, it's just interesting. But if you do feel like you need more variety in your life, the board is actually double-sided with this beautiful winter map, which allows for basically like randomized clearing designations for that weird and slightly break up of any tactics you might have already established. However, because of like the already massive variation in the game, I feel like you might not really ever touch upon this one unless you become like true Root masters. I wish you told me that before I got here. It's just that the winter map really only truly shines once like everyone kind of has a basic understanding of the advanced tactics needed to break up the systems, you know? It's 25 degrees. But if you feel like you do need a little more variance in your game, that's when you would begin to bring out the Riverfolk expansion, introducing a second Vagabond player to make it even more confusing as to how to deal with things, 2 new core factions, as well as a whole bunch of other bits and pieces, allowing for 5 or even 6 players. I mean, technically you could play 7 players, but it's already a bit of an unruly beast at times. So realistically, 5 is like the maximum you could sort of get away with. Starting out, we've got the titular Riverfolk company, who are a band of sort of mercantile otters who other players can buy wares off, be it your actual hand of cards themselves, as well as transport across the rivers, or even use of your mercenary units to try and fight people with. Then by using these accumulated funds, the otters gain more actions on their turn, as the mighty fist of big business comes crashing down on everyone. Or you can play them as like a sort of organised crime syndicate, strong-arming people into buying from you so that you then don't smash down their lumber mills. Adding in the possibility for other players to sort of bolster up areas where they may be lacking, be it buying a card that they just desperately need, or just allowing for a bit more diverse movement. The Riverfolk company and their power of big capitalism business manages to like add to the game seamlessly. They just feel like a natural addition to the game. Be wary of any players that may have a silver tongue, because they are going to run away with this faction with like the dirtiest of deals, and people will just keep buying them despite no major benefit to themselves. However, the otters do also live and die by their deals. So if you have a game where no one buys from you, you're going to be in for a terrible time with stunted gameplay. To follow up on the lovely and charming otters, you've got the mysterious and weird lizard cult. The most confusing faction out of the lot. They have the ability to place warriors anywhere on the map and aim to build gardens to their ancient deity. Be careful trying to stop them though, as every warrior that dies defending in battle becomes an apostle that allows the cult to perform powerful conspiracies, such as removing buildings. They're the weirdest faction in the game, and I'm still not entirely sure if they're actually good. every single time we've played them, we've slowly begun to learn just whether or not we're meant to score at the right time, and they are getting better, but they're so entirely different to almost every other faction that they can seem a little bit of an outlier. Without anyone actually attacking them, the amount of moves you can do each turn are very few and far between, unless you buy specific card bonuses and build them. Otherwise, you're just trying to become a nuisance to get people to attack you, to then actually do something, and maybe just build enough gardens that people feel the need to attack. There's also a sort of AI counterpart for the Marquis de Cat, but they're neither here nor there. The main thing that I really like are the new vagabonds, such as this stabby cat. I love them. Their ability is to literally burn a clearing to the ground. I love them. Thankfully though as well, the expansion is the only place you'll see the aforementioned Kickstarter differences. The main one, well, the only one, is these card holder bits of wood. In the general release of the expansion, you only get one. But don't worry, because, I mean, we've never really ever used them in our games. We just use our hands. For a game that is entirely about war and managing various systems, it's not actually that complicated. You see, the combat is as simple as rolling 2 dice. Just move your units into a clearing with other units, and then just roll the dice. Also, if you ever get confused or lost as to what one of your things do, your board is detailed with instructions on how to do every single thing that your faction needs to do. Not to mention you've got 2 rule books, cheat cards with tips and tricks on the factions for each faction, as well as a walkthrough. There is probably a point to be said that your first game might feel a little bit like you're just following some instructions on how to play, and you're not actually really thinking anything. But by the time you're about halfway through and the gears begin to click into place, you'll quickly realise that you don't need to actually look at the rules anymore, and you're now thinking independently. You're just kind of trying to work out how your limited number of actions can hopefully win you the game. Despite the fact I've never actually won a game of Root among my group yet, I still kind of love the game. Part of that is down to just how amazingly beautiful the game is. The pieces feel great to touch, to look at and to place. There's something about marching your pieces into a clearing, defiantly slamming them down to let everyone know you mean business. However, you do also have to be able to accept other people's business. At a risk of this video becoming even longer than it already is, I'm going to talk about the victory point tracker, which is fine. It's fine. However, there isn't a potential issue that arises from the leader being knocked around a lot. If you get a little too far ahead at the wrong time, everyone will put all their effort into destroying you, only for someone else to quickly just race ahead to the end off of that, and for you to not really ever be able to make a way back from your massive loss just then. Some factions can be attacked too hard too early on and get set back to the point where they may just not be able to actually have a good chance of winning. You kind of have to just be okay with the idea that victory may be swept out from beneath your feet at the very last moment, and not in an all too noble way either. Root boils down to basically trying to hide the fact that you're basically winning for the entire game until the very last moment, where you score like 10 points in one fantastic magical move, but at the same time no one else on the board can actually do anything to stop that. So many of the last turns that I've played among my many games of actual gameplay have involved everyone primed and ready to finally just like sweep victory and claim it as their own, only for someone else to do it just a second before them because of turn order, and for them to just lose. There are dominance cards, which are an alternate victory conditions that mainly revolve around ruling specific clearings, but I've never actually seen anyone try and pull these off effectively other than a sort of last-ditch effort that normally doesn't actually work. Also, and this will be the final thing, it's not really a game you can just sort of take to someone's house and play 1 or 2 games with. It's the sort of game that you establish a group to actually play it. It's not a complicated game, but trying to explain it to people and for them to truly enjoy it, it's something you're meant to explore. You can't just kind of play it once or twice with a couple of people. It's one that you have the same group and always come back to in order to play it. If you get a good group set up, you could play this game for like half a year easily and just lose yourself in all the factions and everything. But you wouldn't be able to take it to a friend's house just to try out for an evening and then never play with them again, because they probably won't enjoy it to the fullest extent, just because they might at most play 2 factions, and even then only begin to look up from their board towards the end of the second playthrough. So, Root, it's a board game. I kind of love it. It's a great, not entry game, but like entry to slightly more complex games that have a few more rules to them, that require a little bit more thinking. Partly, it's just down to how accessible the art is, because it's not massively complicated as well. It's relatively simple to be able to just pick it up in a couple of games and be able to play it quite happily. If the idea of a game that is mostly different every single time you play it, as you and your friends try and grapple their minds around this sort of weird puzzle of asymmetry and just trying to learn how to exploit at every single turn with new bits and pieces, then I'd greatly recommend just getting some friends together, create like a Root group and playing it all the time, because I guarantee you'll probably very much so enjoy it. If not, if that doesn't sound like something that, I don't know, tickles your fancy, still get it. Genuinely, it's a really just nice game to look at. Honestly, just everything about it looks so pretty. Like the box, the cards, the pieces. It's just a nice game to look at and have. So much so that I love nature now. I'm gonna go outside. Maybe not on that one. Thank you for watching my video. Who would have guessed that the first half of it would have suffered from technical difficulties that I myself caused by accidentally closing the program mid-recording? Ha 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 ha. I hate everything. It was something different, that's for certain. Otherwise, I do have videos such as this one and this one, which are out video games, or click on my face of subscriptions, because I might do more video game stuff, but also more board game stuff in the future, because I like board games. Thank you, and goodbye.